Okay, I'm here with Richard Turren, author of best-selling author of Cashless and prior to that, a book on innovation. Thanks very much, Richard. Great to finally meet, having chit-chatted for, it seems like absolutely forever through the medium of LinkedIn and other things. Look, what I wanted to do was pick your brains a little bit about your observations about mainly not so much about where China's come from, but where it's heading to, particularly in the context of digitalization and money. And one of the areas that I find particularly fascinating is the interactions between blockchain technology, which has been adopted in the West really from the point of view of cryptocurrency, and the emergence of the central bank digital currency. What's your take on how those two pieces kind of fit together in the Chinese context?
Yeah, Warwick, it's wonderful to meet you finally live and in person. It's a great honor to be here. And so let's talk about blockchain in China first, and then we'll move on to central bank digital currency. And the reason is because they're sort of separate, but we'll get into it. So blockchain in China. First of all, for everybody out there, China loves blockchain. And China built something called the Blockchain Service Network, which is a domestic and international network of blockchain system. It is actually right now the world's largest blockchain system, and it has nodes all across China and some 20 or 30 international. I can't keep count anymore. And it basically runs two blockchain networks. And this is the important part for anybody outside of China listening. It runs a permission blockchain inside China, which is required for the Chinese data protection laws. Okay, so basically there's no decentralized blockchain. Everything that's blockchain in China is DLT, a permission blockchain instance. But for outside of China, if you're using the international side of the blockchain service network, you can use truly permissionless public blockchain like Ethereum or most of the major protocols. Now, why is this important? Because China is digitizing its society in the broadest way possible. Forget about it. We've got cashless society here. We've got a society that is heavily digital, and blockchain is perceived by the government as being a technology that will help further digitize China. Thus, it has been built as a public infrastructure. It's built and run on this blockchain service network, which is paid for by the government, which they liken to building bridges and roads. So blockchain, a real strong public priority, and it's viewed as basic infrastructure that the government should pay for so that people can use it cheaply. And that's the whole point. If you look at the blockchain service network, whether the international or the domestic versions, it makes the rollout of a blockchain system literally pennies. I mean, look, I used to sell this stuff at IBM, and we had cloud versions of blockchain. And, you know, when you were looking at an install for a company, even if you're doing it on cloud, it was still expensive stuff. And, when you look at the cost of running this stuff on China's network, it's literally, $10, $100. It's really, shockingly inexpensive. And that's also a mover for the international blockchain because on the international side, companies can use it cheaply. So, and they're building stuff on it. We'll get into what they're building on it later. Okay, so now let's do the next step, which is going to be a surprise. So we've covered blockchain, and we've said it's good and it's big in China. Got that. Next thing is digital currency and the central bank digital currency. Now wait for it, folks. Many assume incorrectly that this is built on blockchain. It's not. So we've got blockchain over here, and we've got central bank digital currency, a separate topic. And for many, they assume, oh, that's got to be based on blockchain, because we assume that all cryptocurrencies or digital currencies are blockchain based. But this one, China's is not. And real quickly, there's one fundamental reason why, and that is because they need huge transaction volume. Okay, China has 1.4 billion people. A lot of people hitting the network with transactions. So Alipay, for its 11/11 single day, so it's 11 November, 11 the date, right? 1111, that's singles, right? That's the version of Christmas for China. On that big day, Alipay peaks at 500,000 transactions per second. It's massive. Now let's give that number some perspective. If you look at Visa and MasterCard in the West, their networks are somewhere in the range of 50 to 70,000 transactions per second. So we add an extra zero to that to get to Alipay kind of numbers. So blockchain as we know it now does not really have the transaction throughput to handle that. Now, for some of you who are saying Ethereum 2.0, my answer is that might be true, and I like Ethereum 2.0, but it's not released yet. And China's already been in, China's central bank digital currency was already designed and has been in trials for a better part of almost a year now. So I understand that there are new protocols of blockchain that might do this, but not when China was building, and none of them are what I call bulletproof proven technology. And remember, central banks only use stuff that's bulletproof. So there we've got blockchain, and there we've got why China's central bank isn't built on blockchain. And I think I'll end there now.
How do you see these two digital ledgers in effect interacting with each other? What functions and purposes do they fulfill?
Okay, that's perfect, and that's just perfect lead into what I wanted to where I want to go with this. Ready? So here's what I say: China's central bank digital currency is not built on blockchain, but it is designed to be carried by blockchain. So one of the trials that we've already seen here in China is to actually do payments, payroll payments on blockchain. So they set up a little trial system. They basically had, a couple dozen, it wasn't a lot, but they had some people who had a blockchain enabled system so that I, the bank, or whoever it was who was doing the paying could pay the employees, and they set up a little blockchain system to do that. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at blockchain used as a carrier of digital currency. And there are a whole pile of patents already filed by the PBOC for using blockchain for this purpose, and they don't get a lot of press. They're there, you can read about them, and you can read about them in English even, but they're, this is real back of the news kind of stuff. So here's what happens. China does some sort of new technological feat, and the whole West goes, oh my God, look what China is doing. They're launching a central bank digital currency. The reality is China has been talking about its central bank digital currency, and China has been applying for patents and getting patents for all kinds of technology. And the West really doesn't follow it until it's become a big item in the news. And the reality is they're fairly outspoken or fairly transparent about what they're doing. And they've got all these blockchain patents ready to go for transmission of CBDC. And we can expect them for international use and for domestic use in the next couple of years. You wait, you'll see blockchain being used for that use case.
Yeah, a lot of the initiatives have been hidden in plain sight, I think you'd say.
Yeah, as an author, it really cracks me up. So look, So I'm an author of this book, Cashless, which is above my shoulder, right? So I read everything that comes out on China's central bank digital currency to this day. And you would be surprised how many authors say the PBOC has been secretive. The PBOC has been non-forthcoming. The PBOC is protecting state secrets and not telling us how the central bank digital currency is designed and built. I got a book on the subject, and I certainly did my research, and I consent that I used a lot of Google Translate to do it. But there, it's really funny, other than really specific details, what protocol do they use for their encryption? Even that we actually know, but at some deeper level, you're not going to get it out of them. Sure, I get that. They're allowed to have some secrets, but the basic architecture of this is well known, well publicized, and they've been actually quite forthcoming about it. So the concept that it's somehow a secret is always amusing to me, and I read about it once a week. I read about somebody saying it's a secret, and they're not so secretive about it.
Look, one of the areas that I think is tremendously interesting is the interaction between this technical architecture and China's growing role globally, particularly in terms of trade in the first instance, but also in terms of its role as a financial institutions creator through things like the Asian Infrastructure Development Bank and those sorts of things. Do you have any thoughts about what the direction is in terms of CBDC, blockchain, and the global architecture that is rolling out over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot of thoughts on that because I wrote a lot about that in Cashless. Okay, so look.
Well, don't give all the secrets away because people need to buy the book to get, to the guts of it. But if you can,
I will not. But that's a great point. Look, we have to envision a world where central bank digital currency is used in cross-border trade. And we have to envision and that's not, you should not be surprised, okay? First of all, central bank digital currency, not just China's, even though it's the first of the large countries to publish one, it's going to be used for international trade. There's plenty on that, okay? China specifically is building all kinds of infrastructure right now. It's building in Hong Kong what's called the M for multiple CBDC project with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the Bank of International Settlement Innovation Team, who are wonderful. Shout out to them. But they're preparing this. It's the digital RMB to go abroad. Okay, now China has always faced a quandary. And the quandary is how to export RMB and ensure that that RMB is used in ways that it is targeted for. So what you're going to see, especially within Belt and Road Initiative countries, is that increasingly trade contracts and or even consulting contracts, many of these are going to be written into the agreements between China and whatever BRI country. They're going to be written with a digital RMB component in them. So if you want to acquire trade services, or if China is pushing money to a supplier of services that has to be paid in RMB, it'll be paid in digital RMB. Because now, so with fiat RMB that hits the international banking sector, that goes to a bank in whatever BRI country, there's of course the possibility of fraud. There's the possibility that we don't know where the money went, and that just happens. That's an acknowledged problem with aid projects all over the planet. Now with digital RMB, if you say, well, you were given X number of digital RMB to use with Chinese contractors. Where did it go? We can tell where it went. Now, for on a retail side, I know that that concept that currency is traceable is scary, but when you get into the realm of development projects, it's wonderful. And it's going to be the gold standard for China's development efforts going forward, because you will have, and this is 5+ years off. It has to be launched retail in China first, obviously. But at some point in the future, you're going to see the digital RMB heavily used with global development, particularly in BRI countries.
Seems that there's two very interesting issues here. One is privacy, which we'll come back to in a tick, because that's probably the one issue that really fires people up around this question of digital currency, whether it's Chinese or not. But the second issue that is of interest is the programmability of this digital instrument. You mentioned before that the ability to essentially direct the purpose of a particular payment for certain things implies the ability to to prohibit it for use on other things. Is that the sort of thing that's envisaged in terms of that level of programmability?
Absolutely. Look, we've got a couple of big bankruptcy cases right now going on in China with Evergrande and another one down in Hainan. The name escapes me right for the moment. And, one of the things that happens is that money gets sent off to offshore from China for supposedly business purposes, and it's not a secret or a surprise. It buys Ferraris and Lamborghinis. So, that's been a constant problem for China, is evasion of currency controls, money going offshore, and then not going for its intended purposes. And with the digital RMB, it is a controllable currency. It has basically two methods of control. One is sort of what is referred to as a big data center that can see where it's going, and that's operable from day one when the currency launches. And the second is turned off at launch. You can expect it to come in a couple of years, and that is programmable smart contracts. Okay, so let's leave smart contracts aside for a moment. Anybody familiar with Ethereum, where smart contracts are built regularly? That's what will be built into the digital currency. And in some years in the future, it'll be turned on and it'll be at use. But right now, so let's just say that we've got, I'm going to pick Kenya as a big BRI country just because it's the first one to come off the top of my head. Okay, so let's just say China and Kenya are doing business and they're using digital RMB, and the digital RMB is targeted to go to any number of suppliers back in China. So what happens oftentimes, you've got money gets put into whatever country, and that country is supposed to be it should be spent on a consultancy that's doing something, some sort of consultancy. So what happens now is that once that digital RMB is given for an aid project, you can see where it goes. So it has to go. It can be programmed or at least monitored with the big data collection facility to say, look, we sent over 2 billion RMB. The 100 million of it went here, 100 million is in the bank. You can actually follow where it would go and see that it was put to use for its intended purposes. And that's dramatic. And, that's macro scale with aid payment, right? But that's also going to happen on the retail payment. Look, welfare payments to human beings in China or in other countries that adopt central bank digital currency. You can program the currency so that it can be used for food, for rent potentially, or for buying something, but you can make it so that it's not used on alcohol, tobacco, or firearms, for example. You can program where it goes, or you can program that it has to be spent within a region because there's been an earthquake and those funds are for rebuilding the earthquake region. So these are just practical uses of the programmability of CBDC. And we're talking about aid, which is macro scale, but we can bring that down to human scale for a welfare payment or for an aid payment in, if there's been a hurricane, a typhoon, or an earthquake. And that's the new world of programmable currency we're all going to live in sometime soon.
A great segue into, particularly at the retail level, where there have been critiques made, I guess, and concerns around CBDCs and the extent to which they impact on notions of privacy. As I understand it, there are some fairly nuanced approaches to layering this issue of transparency and privacy. What is actually happening on that front in terms of the CBDC and how it's designed?
Sure. Okay. First thing to make clear to all people who are listening, there is no single pattern for a CBDC. China built China's CBDC. The Bahamas built the Bahamas. They're all technically very different. So now with the European Central Bank looking at building a CBDC, or Sweden, which is also in trials, they're all going to build central bank digital currencies that support the society's view of privacy. So don't let anybody tell you all central bank digital currencies are bad, all central bank digital currencies have terrible privacy. It doesn't work like that because they're all custom built for the country. So China's central bank digital currency has something called controllable anonymity built in. And what it basically says is I have the right to pay you a small level of a limited amount of currency. And I can't remember what it is right now. It's probably in use for China right now. It's trials, it's not fixed, but it's probably around $200 US, something like that. That I can pay you. Maybe. Yeah. So it's something like that. And it's basically, I can pay you and I have the right to push a button and say, you do not know who I am or where that comes from. Now, is that good? Yeah, it's actually pretty good because it's better than, it gives you more privacy than it is afforded by the WeChat and Alipay systems that exist right now. So it's better than what China's got. Everybody uses WeChat and Alipay here. So CBDC has a demonstrably higher level of privacy than the existing payment systems. B, it's better than what we've got with cashless payment in the West because none of your credit cards afford you the ability to be completely anonymous to the person you pay money to. That's not part of the system. It was never baked in the system. So China's CBDC has some good things. So it has controllable anonymity, which is good. But let me be clear, behind the system, you are anonymous as far as your data is concerned and the transfer of payments to the receiver. But behind the system, the central bank has a knowledge of where all payments go in the country. So every time a payment is made, there's a digital record of that. It's like a Bitcoin record. It has a record of a long string of numbers. It doesn't know who made the payment. It doesn't have your name attached to it. But on two separate data servers, you can, if you have the right set of keys, connect this anonymous transaction with keys that the government has. You can connect them with the names and put them together. And that's the nature of privacy. And that's one way that China deals with privacy. And it's likely that other nations will deal with the concept that, okay, there's some minimum amount that we're not going to trace, and that with digital payments, some of them will be completely somewhat pseudo-anonymous, but not fully. Governments across the planet hate fully anonymous cash transfer because it means that you can't collect taxes. No one will physically pay taxes if you have fully anonymous cash transfer. So don't expect any government to have high value, completely anonymous central bank digital currency. Just not going to happen, because that's what governments do. They collect taxes.
That idea of that retail payment in particular also raises in my mind another interesting design feature, which is the ability for peer-to-peer transactions to take place offline. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Okay, so the fundamental thing so let's help people understand this. Anybody out there who has digital payments today says, my payment is already digital, whether it's an Apple Pay or whether it's a tap credit card, and you'd be right. When I use WeChat Pay and Alipay, or if I use a tap and pay credit card like I'm used to in the West, what I'm physically doing is, yes, I'm using digital payment, but I'm moving money between accounts. So after I make that pay button on WeChat here in China or tap, what's happening is money is moving from one account to another. Okay, so what we've got in China now is a system that's tokenized money, which is reminiscent of the Bitcoin universe, where basically money is a long string of zeros and ones. All right. And so I'm going to say something, right? When I make this payment with WeChat and Alipay in China, I can say accurately, the money is not on the phone. I see 100 RMB in an account, but that 100 RMB isn't on the phone. It's just showing me that that account, which is in a bank somewhere, has 100 RMB, and I move it. Ready? Now that I go to a digital currency universe, when I say I have 100 RMB in China's digital yuan, and it's on my phone, the digital string of zeros and ones literally is on my phone. So what I can do is I can take two phones, and when I transfer money from one to the other, if I have a network, fine, it uses the network, it goes through some back ends, great. But if I'm in the rural China where there is no signal, and that's really important. So that's really critical. So what farmers can do is that they can take one phone, put it next to the other, and it will transfer using near field communication, NFC, which is what Apple and Apple Pay and Google Pay use. And it can literally transfer the money to some limited small amount from one phone to the other. Now, what's interesting about this is that this was a very early design requirement. What the PBOC did to their innovation and research team for CBDC is they said, look, the currency has to do this. If you're going to design digital money, it has to have privacy. It has to have some level of transfer without a signal. And there were two more, and they're
in the book. So if you
they're in the book, and they escape my mind, but they're really interesting because they were part. The PBOC said, look, if you're going to build this, it has to have these characteristics up front. here's what your design feature is, go build it. And it was very interesting because the design elements were quite well thought out, and that's what they built around.
Now, the last thing that I'm going to touch on today, whilst I've got you here, is aside from money, you mentioned right at the outset that we're on a pathway towards the digitalization of society. And money transacts with things, and a lot of those things are increasingly manifest as digital assets. What's happening in relation to the digitalization of assets and how that is being governed in the context of the wallet architecture, for example, that is going to house and enable the CBDC? Will the wallet, for example, also be someone's wallet for their digital assets?
Yeah, and that's a really wonderful question. So I talk about this particularly with regard to the West. Okay, forget about China for a second. Let's look at some not so distant future where we're probably about 5 years away from this. And so crypto fans, I'm speaking specifically to friends of cryptocurrency, and most of them really hate central bank digital currency because they recognize that it's nothing more than a repackaging of fiat currency, and that's true. So crypto fans, my belief is that you will live in a future where we will all have digital wallets. And these digital wallets may have central bank digital currency in them, should you choose to buy a coffee, and that be the most effective way to buy the coffee. Or they will have some form of cryptocurrency, fine, Ethereum, Bitcoin, I don't care what it is, but we're going to live in a future where we will pick the currency we use depending on its utility. So if I make a payment to you, I have to say, Warwick, do you want central bank digital currency? Do you want Bitcoin? What money is the most useful for the particular transaction that we're carrying out? Now you say, well, now I can view that future right now in China to a limited degree, because for certain payments, I use the WeChat wallet because they may have, I get, if I buy 10 coffees, I get one free, right? And in certain stuff for like my bill paying, I use the Alipay wallet. So those are two competing digital platforms, right? And then I also get, when I pay with either one, I pick which bank account. I have a couple of bank accounts attached to my wallet, so I pick. So when I make a payment in China, I'm thinking, oh, which system do I want to use and which bank do I want to use? And we will all live in some future where we can pick the level where the money we use to pay and whatever that money will be from our wallet, depending on its utility. And that's coming sooner rather than later, because we're going to get stable coins that are actually that have regulatory compliance behind them. That's coming within the next year or two. Let's just leave that on faith. So soon we're going to have native currency, digital currency, stable coins, and crypto. And then we're going to have tokenization of assets where we could actually have stocks, real estate, whatever. And all of this stuff can be on some form of digital wallet. And, this is not like some kind of sci-fi future. We're looking at 5 years off. And that's why people like you, Warwick, are on the cutting edge of this stuff. And what's hard for people to realize is that it's not like this science fiction future that's far away. It's really already there. But what we're waiting for are the regulators to catch up and to allow it to become, I don't want to use this word, but become legit. It's actually already legit. It's just not properly documented within the legal structure of whatever country.
I think probably it's a case of becoming stabilized within an institutional environment.
That's better put, and I couldn't agree more. And so we're really there. The tech is up to it. The technology we sorted out a couple years ago. It's just a matter of figuring out the regulatory context in which this will live, and that does take time. And I consent that that's an important part. But it's not sci-fi anymore. We're there, and I think people like you who are building the systems that are going to allow this to happen are on the avant-garde, and I think you're well positioned to build our digital future.
Well, that's what we were all trying to do, is to make more inclusive, more accessible, lower cost systems, I guess, at the end of the day. On that note, I might leave it officially, because we could talk for another hour, and maybe we'll just reserve that for another occasion. Perhaps I could just wrap up. Aside from thanking you, giving you an open invitation to tell us a little bit about what your next project is, now that Cashless is an Amazon bestseller.
Oh, please. I'm not going to write another book for at least another 3 months, 4 months. Look, Warwick, you are a fine wordsmith, and I know that because you have written so many eloquent posts on LinkedIn. And please, everybody out there, connect with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I talk a lot about all of these topics virtually every day. So the next book is also good. So the current book, which is available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, all of the major digital platforms, is Cashless: China's Digital Currency Revolution. The next book in the series will be Cashless: and I want that what comes after the colon, I want to be describing that it's like, I don't want to call it the lost chapters, but it's going to be after a year, what happened with central bank digital currency in this year. And I've got some of the chapters already in formation. It'll be a shorter book than the last one, but it'll be coming out in next March or April.
Wow. Fantastic.
And but I'm searching now. I need your help to help me with the title, and so I need Cashless: and then something that suggests that it's cashless, the evolution, cashless, the continuing saga. That's what I need for it. But
I can almost see a Star Wars style scrolling screen.
That's what I'm going for.
The saga continues. Look, Richard Turin, thanks very much for your time and your contributions to global understanding of fintech, particularly coming from China, I think has been tremendously valuable for people around the world. I'd encourage all of the people who follow me on different things to directly hook up with Richard and keep up to Richard's work and the posts that he puts out there.